Well, hello there. I'm back. Grumpy Gamer here. We're bringing you a brand new video, and in today's video I've got a special treat for you guys. Instead of doing what we usually do, we're going to be having some campfire stories going. So of course this is just designed to pass down the winter, because it is currently winter season, and just pass that over, guys. I don't know, a nice break and a nice change for you guys. So let us wait. I've got the stories ready. And I've got my phone charging on hand in case my phone runs out of charge. So we're going to get into one of our first stories in a moment. But of course we must sit down and be very comfortable against the campfire, for the winter is chilly and cold. So we must be prepared for whatever comes forth. So let us continue on and wait for this very long loading screen. So as you can see, so guys, let us go over to our campfire. As you can see, it is winter. We must warm up now. We must get into our house and we will sit down and we'll talk about our first story. So here is the story. I hope you're all sitting comfortably. I know I am. Origami board knocks back. In high school, my friends and I were messing around with an origami board. One night we had done it before, and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did it to try and scare each other, or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night there was no one else home except the 7 of us. We were all together. Around the board, one of the girls there wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some of the words. The same way every time it gave us answers. They seemed really historically accurate for our town. Things we neither knew or cared about. Long story short, the spirit, quotation marks, claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there. 2. In an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on, my friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. Full stop. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent. However, we were still skeptical. We were almost assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove he was there with us. It went to yes, and then spelled out knock. Then the plantation stopped moving. We all just stared at it silently, and then there was a rap on the window right next to us. The lights were on outside and there was absolutely no one out there. We never touched that board again. So that was an interesting story. It's about people who use an origami board to talk to spirits. Very dangerous type of thing to do, because you never know what you're inviting into your house. So it's very important you're very careful when you do that type of stuff. I've never done it myself because my mum's very superstitious and she won't let me do something like that. That's better. So let's go on to our next story. Forgotten memory. Growing up, my bedroom was the only one that faced the front of the house, street. When I was about 8 or 9, I woke up to my dad calmly but firmly telling me to get up and go in the bedroom and shut the door. I was annoyed because I was half asleep, but I listened, and apparently I was more tired than I realised because I fell asleep on the bathroom floor. The next morning I asked my mum what happened. She seemed oblivious and confused. I looked at my dad like he was crazy, and asked him why he had woken me up. He denied doing it. I was becoming frustrated to the point of tears, but ultimately let it go. Fast forward to college. I was home one break and decided to ask again. Had thought of that night off and on for the years, and it still bothered me. This time my dad goes, I was wondering if you ever remembered that. Turns out that a lot of houses on our block were being vandalised and robbed all those years ago. Someone had broken into the garage and was inside the house. My room was partially over the garage. My dad had heard it, quietly got me to safety. The police were called. The guy ran. He was never caught. However, my parents didn't want a terrified kid on their hands, so for years They pretended like nothing had ever happened. It wasn't supernatural, but it was unsettling for sure. Very interesting, that one. The horrors of human beings. Yeah, that's right, folks. Human beings can be scary things too, guys. It's very important you remember that, because if you get yourself caught out in the wilderness, you never know what could happen. Now let us move on. That's a creepy picture. Okay, guys, so we're going to go on to our next one. This one's called Phantom Alarms. So, let's get into it, I suppose. When I was in high school, I had a lot of these experiences. At the house my dad lived in at the time, it was really old, built in the early 1800s. There were plenty of times I'd be sitting in the living room distinctly hear the cabinets open and closing in the kitchen. It was just me and my dad that lived in the house. You could clearly see when his bedroom door was shut and he was asleep, but still hear it. Normally, my dad worked 7 to 3, but occasionally worked a PM or overnight shift. One night he was working until 11. I was 17 at the time. Around 8 or so, I'm sitting in my room playing Borderlands, and I think I hear footsteps coming from the living room, which was adjacent to my bedroom. I assume my dad's home early and go back to playing Borderlands. I'm going to sit up so I talk more clearly. Sorry if I've broken your immersion. I keep hearing the steps, so I pause the game and continue on. Oops, sorry guys, my charger's got caught in my headphone cable. There we go. Let's continue on. Go back to playing Borderlands. I keep hearing the steps, so I pause the game and listen. And the footsteps are just slowly pacing back and forth between the living room and the kitchen. In a steady rhythm. I laid in bed scared shitless. Yeah, great. And actually counted the steps. Every time it took 15 paces to the living room. 15 paces to the living room, 15 back to the kitchen. Needless to say, I did not sleep that night. Had another situation at my mum's house about 2 years prior to this. Out of nowhere, my alarm clock would go off at midnight, and I assumed it was busted and got rid of it. Fast forward 2 years, my mum gets a brand new alarm clock for my room. Also when I was 17, I might add. Suddenly, alarm goes off at midnight. I thought nothing had turned it off. Happened again next night, and my sister pointed out the old one I had that did it. So I checked and made sure no alarms were set, and double checked at 11:56. Sure enough, 4 minutes later my alarm goes off. Freaked out, I threw it out. The next night, my dad's night. That next night was my dad's night to have me. I had a buddy of mine over, and my dad was working that night. So he left for work around 2 AM, and my friend had brought over an iPod dock to listen to music on, and didn't have the clock set or anything. My friend knew nothing of the last couple of nights, so I knew he wasn't just messing with me. So about 2 minutes after my dad leaves, we hear an alarm clock going off from my room. I went in, and you know how if you just plug in a clock without setting it, the numbers just blink on and off. Well, it was doing that as soon as I picked it up. The clock itself, 12:00, and then just turned off by itself. So yeah, paranormal, not good. I'm not religious at all, but I'm 100% convinced that it happens. Now that was a spooky one. I wonder what would happen there. So we got another story. This one's a little bit more interesting. Ooh, spooky. I believe the day is going slowly but surely. It doesn't actually tell me. I just need to make sure it is actually going, guys. This is the whole idea, just to give you guys something else. So yeah, it is going. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm going to find another really spooky one, because these right now are a bit, I don't know, not the best ones. I was going to read up some creepypastas, but I feel like everyone does that. Oh, here we go. Sloss furnaces. Okay. There's not a lot. Where's the ghost stories in this sound? Do I have to like click it? Do I? I'm trying to find some ghost stories, and instead it's just giving me like an area to go. Right, here we go. This is excellent. I'm just gonna go shut my door, and then we'll continue on. Spooky. It's getting very, very spooky in here, you could say. Alright, let us close that HUD again and keep your immersion going. And let's continue on. Okay. I want the spooky tales. I don't want the medical claims. Okay, here we go. Right. I've got one for you. The Shadow in the Fog. Phew, my windows, like, I've got no blinds on my window over, so I'm gonna have to probably shut my blinds after I've done this one. But this one seems really good. So anyway, let's continue on with this story. When I was in elementary school, my father would often take me hiking in the mountains. One night we had stayed out too long, and it began to grow dark. A thick fog drifted over the hillside, and I could barely see the path in front of us. My father was holding my hand to make sure I didn't fall. As we made our way down the slope, I noticed a small shadowy figure appearing out of the mist on the path up ahead. My father suddenly squeezed my hand very tightly. I responded, "Ow, Dad, that hurts!" I cried. My father looked down at me. His face was grim. "Close your eyes," he barked, "and don't open them again until I say so." His tone of voice was so stern that I did, and as I was told, without questioning. He kept a tight grip on my hand with his eyes tightly shut. I stumbled along beside him through the fog. When we passed the spot where the shadowy figure had been, I heard a small voice muttering, "Die, die, 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 die." The rest of the way down, my father was silent. It wasn't until he got back home that he finally allowed me to open my eyes. Since that time, he refused to speak about the incident. 20 years later, I paid my father a visit. He was drinking some alcohol and we were having a heart-to-heart conversation. Something reminded me of that strange incident on a mountain path, and I decided to ask him about it. "Remember that small shadowy figure in the fog?" I said. "Who was it?" My father was silent for quite a while. Eventually, in a low voice, he replied, "It was you. It was you." With that, he refilled his glass and refused to discuss it any further. "Sorry, my fire's just gone out. I need to relight my fire." That was a spooky one, wasn't it, guys? I don't know how long these game hours last, by the way. We probably will have to do a whole story section for this. Alright, anyway, let's move on. Let's not get sidetracked by something that has no relation. But I suppose that there's like sayings, there's like some entities, what they'll do is they'll take on your appearance and force you to commit, and like they like somehow possess you and force you to commit suicide, and that's why the entity was muttering "die, die, die," I suppose, in that story. It's a sort of like, I guess, like you could say like a siren type of thing, because I suppose that's how sirens like lure sailors to their death. I'm just gonna have a quick drink, guys, sorry. So the next story I reckon we should talk about is going to be another one that we know. That bird trap still hasn't got a bird in it. If you're wondering, we do have 14 meat, so we are alright. We've got berries as well. So, anyway, make sure the doors are closed. I'll just imagine one night being sitting here sleeping in game and then just suddenly an apparition appearing. And man, I just literally chuck my PC out my window if that were to happen. I wouldn't even leave my PC. I'll just chuck it out. I'll be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Now I think about that. Oh, that's giving me the creeps thinking about that. Alright, let's get back into this. Guys, it's nearly Halloween. I say nearly, we've got about 25 days till Halloween, but I love being in like the spooky spirit. That's why I'm sort of doing like this as a sort of different way. Instead of just me grinding out by myself, I thought I'd share this experience with you guys and tell you some spooky stories while I'm just waiting for time to pass, guys. So let's continue on. So I'll tell you about the storage room. Oh, in the next one we'll talk about. So let's get comfortable. Is everyone comfortable? I hope so. When my father retired from his job, he had a lot of time on his hands. He began looking around for something to occupy himself. That space at the end of the hallway is such a waste, he said. We could turn it into a storage room. My father was like a man possessed. He spent 2 days working on his new project. He hung 2 shelves on the wall and fitted a door, creating a small cupboard at the end of the hallway. When I came home the next day, he was nowhere to be seen, and I noticed that there was a shiny new padlock on the door in the storage room. The following evening, my father still hadn't returned. My mother was very anxious and begged me to look inside the storage room. Both of us were wondering what he was keeping in there. I broke the padlock and opened the door. Instead, we found my father sitting on the floor. His eyes were vacant and he was laughing softly to himself. What was he doing? How did he lock the door from the inside? We never got the answer to our questions because my father had gone insane. Today he is still sitting alone in the storage room, staring into space, smiling happily to himself. That's a very, very odd one. It's very spooky as well. You think about a dark room. Dark room. Ooh. 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 You can see there's a mist setting as well. You can see that? Can you see that? There's like a mist coming over. Ooh. It's getting spooky. That's how you know there's a cold Arctic chill coming. We can sleep in an hour. So let's continue on, guys. That one scared me. I don't know why. Because you didn't, like the other ones that I've read to you, you knew there was something, but this one is sort of, you can't imagine, you can imagine it, but your imagination can't actually predict what this thing could actually do, and that's why it's so spooky to you. And that's why I suppose like the suspense horror films are the best horror films, because your mind can't actually predict what is going to come. You can't predict it, so it spooks you even more because you're preparing for something that could come and couldn't come. And I suppose that's why everyone loves those types of horror films so much. Right, I'm just going to quickly eat something so I don't die. I'm obviously going to need to eat some... I haven't actually been poisoned by a mushroom yet, so I think this won't be the one. Ah, great. Have I got any more St. John's wort? I do. Phew. Alright. Okay. As long as you got St. John's wort, you're alright when you get poisoned. So, let's have a look. Let's find a couple more scary stories to tell you. Ha ha ha. Here's some very, very spooky ones. How about... No, not the lost dog. Not the try to smile one, because that'll just be one that will trigger your insomnia. How about... Children of Bodom sounds good. Okay. Maybe not. How about Willowbrook State High School? Here we go. Okay, guys. So I hope you're sitting comfortably, and I hope you're ready for our next story, because here it comes. So, Willowbrook State School is a scary place in Staten Island, New York. Many years ago, it was an institution for children with mental disabilities. However, it was overcrowded and filthy. Many of the patients were abused. Eventually, it was closed down and the place was abandoned. Today, the dilapidated buildings are said to be haunted by the ghosts of the children who died there. So, it's a fun fact for you guys. Disabilities back in this time, I don't know when this is dated. The one that's actually told me it's probably about the early 1900s, maybe, probably. The disabled weren't that very well looked after. It was like very, very big thing that people believed. But very much up until the mid 20th century, people still believe that if you were disabled, you were possessed by the devil or something like that. And trust me, the people who were saying that were probably just as were very, very insane themselves and should have been locked up in these institutes instead of these disabled kids who had done nothing wrong in their lives. But you know, so it's telling me I could sleep, so we're going to sleep and we're going to go on to our next story in a second. I don't like that. I'm hearing something walking and I don't know whether it's just the fire crackling. Let me just get out the knife. I got my knife. Okay, it's okay. I've got a knife. Just gonna clear out the area. Oh, oh wow, that stump spooked me. Oh wow. Oh god, just have my heart drop. Why don't you? All right, let's continue on, guys. So, our next story. Don't you move, shadows. I have not told you to move. You're gonna spook me. So let's just go on to our next story. Okay, so where were we? Willowbrook State School. It began as a hospital for mentally handicapped children. The school had a terrible reputation and was used like a warehouse, where the mentally disabled children were dumped. Many of them were abandoned by their families. As an Arctic chill fog setting on the whole area, so there's no way we're going out in that today. Anyway, where was I? However, the school quickly was supposed to care for them. However, the school overcrowded and employees weren't able to control the patients. The mentally disabled children were locked in rooms for extended lengths of time and forced to sleep on the floors, covered in their own pee and poop. Many of the children were malnourished and underfed. Most of them ran through the halls dressed in ragged clothes or completely naked. Conditions became so bad that a lot of the children contracted diseases and died from illness and malnutrition. Unable to deal with the situation, some staff members began abusing the children physically. Some of the kids even wandered away from the institution and ended up dying in the surrounding woods. Between 1963 and 1966, secret medical studies were even conducted on the children. Doctors infected them with hepatitis in order to study the disease. They began being used as human guinea pigs. So guys, I'm going to ask you what date you reckon this was happening, and you can have one guess. This was happening in 1963 to 1966. That's awful if you think about it, guys. That's awful how long that's awful, isn't it? And it's only about 54 years gone. 54 years gone, and that sign of that stuff was happening. Just awful. Right, anyway, let's continue on. When Senator Robert Kennedy visited the mental institution in 1966, he called it a snake pit. He declared the Willowbrook State School is not for even animals to live there. He said that the patients were living in filth and dirt and their clothing and rags, less comfortable and cheerful than the cages which we put into animals. In 1971, Willowbrook State School was cut drastically, which led to Worse conditions, and local newspapers and TV stations began doing reports on overcrowding and the unsanitary conditions and the physical and mental abuse of the disabled children. In 1972, reporter Geraldo Riviera secretly gained access to the Willowbrook State School using a stolen key and managed to document the brutal and horrific living conditions with the camera crew. His report led to immediate government inquiry and lawsuits were filed against New York State. By the mid-1980s, Willowbrook State School closed down and many of the buildings were abandoned today. They lie vacant in ruins, littered with the old toys, lunch trays, and broken beds. Sometimes people claim to hear disembodied footsteps echoing the deserted corridors. Others have heard whispered voices, calling out their names in the eerie sound of children giggling in hallways. One employee saw ghostly figures of two children lurking in the building, the boy and the girl dressed in ragged clothing. The woman was puzzled because she could not figure out what the children were doing. She followed them and watched them as they turned the corner, disappearing from sight. When she peeked around the corner, saw nothing there but an empty hall. She realized she had just seen two ghosts. Teenagers who trespass on the property often tells tales of shadowy figures chasing them away from the buildings. Two boys went exploring in the school at night. They were chased around the grounds by a dark figure. Eventually they managed to run back to their house. When they looked out the window, they realized the shadowy figure had followed them home and was standing in the garden. They watched it from the window as the thing stood in front of their home until the sun came up. In 1987, the body of a young girl was discovered in a shallow grave on the grounds of Willowbrook State School. She had disappeared from her home a few days before when police had investigated. They found a homeless man named Andre Rand living in a makeshift shack nearby. Years before, he had been working as an orderly in Willowbrook. Witnesses reported seeing Rand playing with the missing girl on the day she disappeared. Police charged him with kidnapping and murder. He is suspect in the disappearance of many children in the area, but the police have been unable to prove it. Newspapers call him the Hannibal Lecter of Staten Island. So now that's what you call a spooky one right there. Man, you don't even need a story of someone getting chased, you just need to know that. Oh wow. Wow, that's a spooky one right there. Tell me what you thought of that one, guys. Good? I thought I quite enjoyed that one. It's quite spooky, it's got quite an essence to it. Scary, mystified, spookiness. Let's have a quick look outside. See how everything's going. So we're actually designed to be quite warm. So let's have a look. How warm are we? Not very warm actually. I was able to craft something, but it seems I still can't craft it. And this is why, if you're wondering why I'm stuck inside doing this, because pretty much I have no way to make any warm clothing to survive the cold, so I'm quite literally stuck in my home, which is the joys, if I'm being perfectly honest with you guys. But anyway, I'm just gonna tell you guys, there might be something behind you. It might be walking with you. It might see you standing there. It might know you're watching it, because it's watching you back, so why wouldn't it know you're there? But always remember, keep a close eye out, because you might see something on the corner of your eye. Okay, let's stop being spooky before I scare myself. So anyway, thank you very much for watching today's video, guys. I've been Crumpy Gamer. This has been a sort of twist. Let me know, would you like me to do all my videos when I do like just my gameplay footage of me just like playing games? Would you like to see me also do like a whole thing of me just literally going around, I guess, and near the end of the video then I just tell you at least one spooky story or a story about the game, like the genre? So maybe, because I'm playing a medieval game, I tell you find some medieval folk stories about ghosts or spirits or banshees maybe. And yeah guys, thank you very much for joining me on my lovely live stream today. It should be uploaded as a regular video as well. Thank you so much, guys. I love doing this to the door. Look at that. Back, out, back, out, back, out, back. Right, I'm gonna stop that. Alright guys, thank you very much. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you know what to do, guys. Thank you so much for the support you bring me. I've just hit over 100 subscribers, and I want to thank you so much for that. We're at 130. If you can make that to 200, that's right, folks. If you can make that by 200 by the end of this year, that'll mean the world to me, guys. Thank you so much for watching today. I've been Config Gamer. You've been watching Medieval Dynasty with a twist to it. I will see you next time, guys. Bye now.